right, Salomé, you're one of the strongest Highline freestylers in the world. And yeah, that makes me kind of interested. What is a good Highline freestyle setup for you? Like, what's the ideal length?
So say I think 70 meters is like the ideal with the good webbing.
The holy grail of Highline trick lining is 70 meters then. What would change if it was like only, let's say, 50 meters long?
50 is really short. It's like what I used to say is like 55 is the shortest that still can be kind of not too bad for really good freestyle, because it's like if it's too short you need to tighten it a bit less, or you can tighten it super strong and have a lot of pop, but then it's like super hard to control, or tighten it a bit less and then you have less pop, you have less time, you have less energy and more surfing. So 50 meters can be okay, but I think not for super hard and powerful tricks.
Okay, let's sum this one up. Like personally, I would also say like between 60 and 80 meter is kind of the ideal
Yeah.
length, because you will not often have this perfect 70-meter holy grail. And if the line is shorter, it gets faster, so you have less time to stick to tricks. So
Yeah.
especially for tricks that are complicated in the movement, you will need more time, so it's better if the line is a bit longer. For other tricks, like for example the almighty flip, you don't need a lot of time, so actually it's a bit more important to have a good pop, so there you rather go for a 60-meter line.
Yeah.
So yeah, depending on the tricks you want to
Exactly.
learn, it's also good to have either a longer or a shorter line. So it's overall, let's say 70-meter is kind of perfect, but it's not the only
No, it's not the
truth.
only.
Also a bit depending on the trick.
And also for a lot of tricks, on longer line, even if you have less pop and less energy at the top and even during the whole bounce, in big line you have more time.
Okay, let's come to the next thing. You've been talking about different tensions on different lengths. So what is the ideal tension for you?
For a lot of people, I would say super tight. I love when you have pop on the line, and the pop is really when you're at the top. There is a moment you can almost leave the line. You can't really, but you almost feel like you are flying, and that's when the magic happens. And yeah, so for me, I need super high tension to feel this pop and be able to fly and do my tricks. And one of my favorite tricks now is the orbital. And especially for this trick, I know that when you have it perfectly, you can do it on almost any line, like Ian did, like Ian do. But for me, for now, I need super poppy line, and yeah, that's it. That's I love when there is a lot of tension and a lot of pop. And even if it starts to surf a bit because of the tension, I prefer this than super low tension.
Okay, super low tension means like no energy coming towards
Yeah,
you. You have
exactly.
to put hard work into the line.
Exactly. The perfect tension is when you have nothing to think, nothing to do for bouncing. Bouncing is just as easy as, I mean, for most of people it's not easy, but it's just like when you have no energy to put in your bounce is when the tension is perfect. Then you can start to think about putting all your energy in new tricks and in new motions.
So the bounce just happens. But at the same time, I feel like if the line is too tight, it becomes really difficult to control it.
True.
So, in my opinion, like yesterday we've rigged a line of 65-meter length, and we tensioned it in the end to about 2.3 kilonewton, 2.4 kilonewton. When it was at 2.5 kilonewton, you told me like, it's a little too tight. And when it was at 2.2 kilonewton, you told me like, a little more power could do the job. So we can see that it's like a really, really narrow way that we have to find for the perfect tension. As you also said, like you can also do all the tricks when you're at 2 kilonewton. We could also do all the tricks when we are at 3 kilonewton. But let's take an example of a Yoda roll. For yoder roll, you don't need much tension overall. It's easy to get the momentum once you know the movement, of course. But overall, I would say, like, if the tension is not too high, it's easier to land because the line feels less aggressive.
Yeah.
On other tricks, you need that kind of pop, and on certain tricks, like the newest tricks, for example, are the triple yoder roll or the double almighty. For those tricks, a lot of power is needed, so you need to feel weightless on the top. So there, it's more important to have like a high tension line that makes it more difficult to land the tricks, but you need the pop to even be able to throw those tricks. So let's sum it up. Like recently there was a competition in Molézan on a line that was only 45 meters long, which is a little short for a Highline Freestyle competition, but anyway, it has happened. The athletes have decided to go for a tension of about 1.8 kilonewton. Now we've rigged the line of 65 meter, and we agreed that the tension needs to be way higher than this 1.8 kilonewton. We went to about 2.3, 2.4 kilonewton, which in the end felt perfect. But obviously not everybody watching this video knows like what is exactly 2 kilonewton. How do you reach 2 kilonewton? So first of all, like after tensioning the line the first time, it will lose a lot of tension. So you tension it once, you do one session, you tension it again, you do another session, you tension it again, and every time you tension it again, you can pull out another half meter, maybe even 1 meter out of the system, because that's just the effect that happens in every kind of slackline. It's called creeping. That means under tension the slackline will lose tension. After a while this effect will almost not happen anymore, so you only have to retension it every couple days, for example when you left it up for like 2 weeks. How do you reach this tension? Like yesterday we've used a 5-to-1 hangover pulley system, and both of us pulled pretty hard. Not extreme, but we were pulling pretty hard. And we ended up at like 2.8 kilonewton, and after a few minutes the line was settled perfectly.
I'm super used now to Highline with Vian and to freestyle with Vian. So I'm used to his tension, and he's tensioning super hard the lines. And when we met with Basti and Tim, they were like, guys, it's too much tension. And Sam did say the same, and it's just because we like this tension, but as soon as the line is not super loose and feel dead, if you prefer like a bit less tension, it's okay. You just have to push harder on your bounce to have a big bounce.
Yeah, definitely personal style. I 100% agree with you on that one. At the same time, I see beginners preferring a little lower tension in Highline Freestyle, and the pros preferring a little higher tension. But this is the trend right now. It doesn't mean that in a year it might not have changed, because it is a really young sport and opinions are still changing pretty fast, depending on the trick you're learning right now. Let's come to the webbing that you want to rig. Like, what do you like rigging? Which kind of webbing?
Since 2 or 3 weeks ago, I would say 70 meters of LSD tube is my favorite setup. And with a light backup, like I use moonwalk as backup, and like just a super light backup, Dynama for safety I think, but just a super light backup, and 70 meters of LSD tube, because there is this time, it's the one of the most powerful webbing I've never been on. Like it's super powerful. When you're at the bottom, you're not like hitting the bottom. You're like slowly going in and then push a bit at the bottom, continue to go up slow. You have time for starting the tricks, and at the top you have the pop, so extra time, and then it's slowly going back down. So for me the LSD bounce is like the perfect bounce.
And what made you change your opinion?
It's not changed my opinion. I just realized I tried in the woods in Chance. I tried the 70 meters of pink tube, and it was super nice too. A bit different, like less powerful, but I don't know. Maybe because of the tension, but maybe a bit easier to control.
100% sure. Go for nylon if you wanna bounce. No polyester, no Dyneema,
And
like really, it just doesn't really work nicely. Both are lightweight webbings. If we, for example, compare it with the red tube would also work for bouncing, but as soon as you're trying like rolling, like sofa rolls, Yoda rolls, almighty flips, whatever, if you have a heavy webbing, you will create more momentum and you will have a much harder time, first of all, to move this webbing to the side, and second of all, also to stick the trick, because like this webbing will, like the shake will go to the anchor point, come back and just kick you down the line. Like webbings like red tube are amazing training webbings, but not performance webbing. So if you really want to learn new tricks, if you want to perform, you should take a lightweight nylon webbing. Okay, let's shortly come to, just shortly, like what's the difference between pink tube and LSD tube. Pink tube has a slightly higher stretch, so also in my opinion I would recommend pink tube between like 50 and 70 meter and LSD tube between 60 and 80 meters. Just like to have, it's not a huge difference, but there is a difference between those two webbings. And let's switch to safety. The pink tube right now is ISA certified. That means the ISA checks. I probably have to stop because of too much wind. I'll continue in a second. Okay, I think you can hear me again. So the pink tube is ISA certified. The LSD tube is not yet ISA certified, but we want to catch up with that really soon to get this webbing also certified. Overall, I really recommend in future to use ISA certified gear, not only webbings but also the web locks, the leash, because then you just know like this gear is safe to use, how it's described in the manual, and it has been going through many tests. There are webbings on the market where you just cannot trust the breaking strength because maybe it's a different batch that has never been tested. Actually, not every manufacturer has a testing machine, so most of the big and good manufacturers do serious tests, but not all the manufacturers do that. So if you want to stay safe and if your life is important to you, go for the certified gear. There are other brands having certified gear. I'm not saying like just go for selectivity gear, but really go for certified stuff. And here comes one recommendation in that is clearly from selectivity. Also other brands are promoting it. The ISA has not yet picked up on the idea, is to use an intermittent connection. An intermittent connection is a physical connection between the main webbing and the backup. In traditional Highline setups, like those two webbings are only connected with tape. So if the main would fade, you would like fall the entire distance into the backup. But we've started like connecting those two systems, at least one connection in the middle. This is basically enough to make it like 10 times safer if something would fail. Really go for wind! Don't stop me from my safety talk, please. So really go for one intermittent connection. It can be a direct soon connection between two webbings, it can be a T-loop. There are different systems that connect the two webbings, but for safety's sake, go for a connected webbing, especially for Highline Freestyle, where you take thousands of leash falls, where you keep sessioning on the same setup for a long time. That makes us change the topic to backups. You started saying like you love lightweight backups, and here I also want to add something. Like on the 65 meter rig we're testing right now, we're using like these 20 millimeter nylon tubes as a backup. This is a personal test, is not what we recommend to use. These are UV light tests also. Those 20 millimeter tubular webbings as a backup, they are super lightweight, therefore super performant, but they are a little too weak as a backup. They only hold about 17 kilonewton when they are new, so under UV radiation they will even lose more breaking strength, and when using them with nuts they will lose even more. So this is not what we recommend. And Salomé has already mentioned it. There are like high-tech backups. So this is one possible solution. Also here, for example, with the Y2K in future, we want to have a certification. Do not use high-tech backups that are not connected to the main line. You would, and I promise that, like if the main line fails, you would break your back. So definitely not what you want to use as a backup, only when there is an intermittent connection, which is more or less in the middle of the setup. Only then you should go for high-tech webbings. This is what we're talking about now, is real high performance setups. This is not necessary for beginners. A good old school nylon backup is totally good enough for Highline Freestyle beginners. Only if you want to perform high level tricks, only then you really want to like get off those single grams of the backup and like increase the performance of the setup.
If I can add something just about the lightweight backup, don't go for a lightweight backup not strong. I mean, there is a lot of lightweight webbing, and we say Dynema because it's the strongest one. And I will never go for a lightweight backup that is not super strong, because our lines, even if they are certified, I think freestyle line, this nylon super dynamic, they're kind of weak, and we need a super strong backup to be safe, and that's the reason why I recommend Dynema and why I use Dynema, because I want to have a safe backup.
Yeah, talking of backup falls, we've done many tests. We want to continue making tests, but obviously it's time taking. But if you want to see how backups perform, like with an intermittent connection and without an intermittent connection, you can click on the link here. There we've explained a lot of things, and if you haven't had enough information, we have a second video here where we've performed even more backup tests. More coming in future, but that's what we have for now. Real people actually standing on the line while somebody cut through the main webbing. It was pretty intense because I was the one falling first time into the backup while somebody cut the line. Yeah, okay, so we kind of know what material we want to go for with the backup. So with the loops and tension of the backup, what is your recommendation there?
When I tape my line, I used to tape to have the sliding main, and to do really big tapes. You can see some air between the two lines, and like this, and I do like big loops. Like for a 65-meter line, I have less than 10 tapes on the line, plus less than 10 tapes and two backup connections. And so with this, I was able to just, because it's big loops, you don't need so much backup, so you can have less backup and still big loops, and not like, if you imagine like a loop just in the air, it can be like a circle or less or more than a circle, and I think your backup loop always need to be a circle or less. If it's more, it's gonna be like too much backup, and when it's twisted, it's gonna be impossible to pull and untwist it. So I really take care of this, and I have big loop because it's way easier to untwist. And when I'm on the line, I also think big loop are easier to control because there is like less motion under the line. There is like in front of me maybe 5 loops instead of 10, or I saw some people like taping each meters of the line. It's like way too much, and you need way too much backup. So what I recommend is sliding main and big loops, and that's what I like.
Yeah, this is interesting. I want to add something here, like in the sessioning area, on those 3 to 5 meters that you really do your tricks. I would recommend like having a tape every half meter, like really something where you cannot get wrapped in the backup, that you really like, for example, when you go for a rocket mount, that you always grab the main and the backup together. Also interesting with the sliding main, personally I do it different. Personally I go for sliding backups and smaller loops, and I always made good experiences with it. But at the same time, I have to admit that never tried your kind of system, and I'm really curious to find out. So honestly, some more tests to be done here from my personal side, and it's really interesting to also learn from you, Salomé.
Yeah, yesterday on your line, I had like this. Before going on the line, I had this like feeling, oh, I'm not gonna have a lot of fun because I knew that the backup are going to be super hard to untwist, and that I'm gonna have if I do, because when you do sliding backup, when you pull it, then you have a big loop of backup under you, and with sliding man never happen. If you pull it and your tape are good, it's just like slowing back exactly the good length every time. And so it's like it's gonna be like a line super twist, and at the end it was big. I think because of the light backup, super light backup, was super easy to control. Even I hate twist. All my friends know this. I hate twist, and as soon as the line is super twist, I feel bad on the line, and I'm going to work to untwist it. So yeah, I hate twist, and with this particular webbing, and it was the same in the woods. I don't have any issue with it. So it's maybe just like Jens. I sent a message to Jan. I said, yeah, it's like it was fun with like even if the backup is not perfect, and it's just saying me because we don't care of the backup.
Yeah.
So maybe when the tension is good and the backup is light, doesn't really matter. Like if you have the good length, that's what a point you had yesterday. Like every time we tension the line, because there is a connection on the middle, we like take some backup on our side. So every time we were like taking off some backup to adjust the length of the backup.
So definitely I recommend try her system with the sliding main. I don't yet know how it really feels, I want to find out. But for the backup length, it's really important that it doesn't engage when you bounce, because if it engages, then you always have like a hard thing in the bottom of the bounce, and it's basically impossible to control the line. You do not want to bounce into the backup. At the same time, try to have your backup as short as possible without bouncing into it. This is first of all good for controlling the line, less twists around the main line, but mainly also for safety reasons. In the videos you've seen here of this 65-meter line, you see a little red part in the middle. This is actually a red tube part, and we call it the Slacktivity Freestyle cushion or Slacktivity Freestyle pillow. The reason why we want to have that is because like thicker webbings are nicer to grab, they have nicer edges, so they are nicer to stand on, but also when you grab them hundreds of times, a thin webbing starts folding and starts like at one point even clapping together if you tighten it too extreme. And so we decided to try out like this freestyle pillow where it's nicer to grab the webbing when doing rocket mounts, it's nicer to your feet, and it's just like more resistant to wear, and that's why we're testing this setup. Right now it's not yet on the market. We hope to bring it on the market in future, but many tests are needed first. We need to see how the sewing performs, and especially how this performs over time, because UV radiation is a really important factor in the whole game. So we also recently just took down a line that was hanging for about 7.5 months in intense sun. It was hanging over summer, so basically the worst you can have it. At the beginning it was like super powerful, and after a few months you started realizing like, okay, it's starting to lose a little bit its power. And that's all caused by UV radiation. And yeah, those fibers are just being stretched and don't give back the same bounce anymore. So overall, also the ISA recommendation is to exchange the webbing after like 180 days of use. If you store the webbing somewhere protected from sun, this is not a day of use, obviously. And 180 days of use, this can be over several years, or it can be 180 days when the line is just hanging for 180 days. A day of use is also when you don't use it, but it's hanging in the sun, because it's mainly about UV radiation. It's not about your bounces that you do on the line, like how much the line gets weakened. Obviously, if you have one sharp object on you, you can weaken the line in one session beyond repair. But no, in normal use, it's really the sun, our biggest enemy.
Yeah. And be careful, because I left my line for a few months. I don't know exactly the line, but and I was always saying like, no, it's okay. It's still super stretch, and I still can bounce it super good. And then I tried again a new pink tube, and I was like, okay, my line is not bouncing anymore.
Yeah, all she wants to say is like, buy a pink tube right now, go on selectivity.com right now, buy it now, and try it out in 3 days. No, yeah, I think we mostly agree on that. Like, new lines are definitely more powerful.
Yeah.
One thing we haven't been talking about yet are leashes, leash handling. Like,
Oh yeah.
what's your recommendation there?
Pad your rings.
Pad your rings. Yeah, we had a few incidents where like people like slid off and like hit, for example, their head on the leash rings, and metal on bone is not what you want to have. So leash ring paddings are becoming more popular in freestyle highlining.
I mean, mine are not super well pad, but there is at least a little pad, and never happened to me to hurt myself with the rings. But I've seen some friends hurting themselves with the rings, and it's like not a big deal to pad your rings. So just do it, and you'll be safer.
Yeah, definitely. Clearly pad your rings. Some people have been praying this sentence for years.
Oh yeah.
And everybody who hasn't done it and has taken the leash rings into their skull regrets that
I
they
mean,
haven't
maybe-
been padding the rings. Personally, to me, it hasn't yet never happened.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it
But
will
one
never
day,
happen to
maybe.
me. But
It doesn't happen too often, but when it happens, you're
happy that
really, really glad. Also, here we're working on a 3D printable padding, and we hope to bring it out really soon. First tests are really promising. If you have like a rubbery leash ring padding, we recommend to use an additional protection around your leash, because rubbery protection or rubbery paddings, they can also rub on your leash and like just damage the fibers after hundreds of sessions. So just put the additional padding, for example, like a 15 centimeter long pink tube over your leash.
Okay. Then I did my leash really long to have the possibility to spin a lot, and especially in combo. In combo, you have to think about where you. I mean, the first time you do a combo, you have to think about where your leash should be for every tricks. Like there is some tricks. If your leash is not at a good place, you're gonna have it like fully around your leg, and you don't want that. Or the only way you can do that, it's like having a long leash, and that's why I do a long leash. Mostly when you do a combo, you think about this before and say, okay, like this I have a perfect combo, I don't have to deal with the leash. But sometimes you want to do a combo and you know that you're gonna have to manage your leash at what point, and when your leash is longer, it's way easier to do it.
It's interesting because I see many really, really strong freestyle highliners going for a really long leash. Personally, I don't go for a long leash. Only on certain tricks like front rolls on the line, that's basically the only trick I really go for a long leash, but then I really adjust the leash for this one session to have it long. Otherwise, I always go for the length of my leg plus about 15 centimeters. And I definitely recommend to Highline Freestyle beginners to go short. The shorter the leash is, the easier it is to climb, the less it can get wrapped around your body, and only on a higher level when you have certain tricks that you want to stick or certain combos that you want to stick that require a longer leash, only then go for a longer leash, only when you have enough experience to deal with it.
When you go for a longer leash, it's really, you know that you're gonna go for tricks with your leash around your leg, and it's not for beginners. It's like, you know you're gonna go for this, and you know maybe you're gonna fuck with this. But so yeah, that's really for some tricks or some combo, and you know that if you do a short leash, you're not gonna be able to do that. So you just go for a longer leash, and you know that it's gonna be wrap around your leg, and you accept it.